All right, let's dive in. Today we are looking at the power of storytelling in business.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, really fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
You sent over this presentation, and I have to say right off the bat, that opening quote really grabbed my attention.
Yeah.
It said, "The most powerful person in the world is the storyteller."
Hmm. I like that.
Makes you think, right?
It does. It really does. And, I think it speaks to that idea that it's not always just the facts. It's how you frame those facts,
Yeah.
And that can really make a difference when you're trying to get people on board with your ideas.
Definitely, definitely. And so this presentation actually lays out some real tactics for how to do that.
Right.
To kind of harness that power of the storyteller. Talks about building like these four bridges, right?
Yeah.
To your audience.
Oh, okay.
What you've done, what you can do, and what you believe.
I like that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think I'm most intrigued, at least initially, by the what you've done bridge.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, like, how much is that just bragging?
Hmm.
Or how do you use those past experiences to actually build credibility?
Yeah, it's a fine line, right? You don't want to just be like, oh, look at me, look at all the great things I've done.
Right, yeah.
But it's really about, sharing those stories, those experiences, but framing them in a way that actually resonates with your audience. So, for example, let's say, you're trying to get your team to try this new project management software, right? Instead of just talking about all the cool features, you could share a story about a time when you used a similar system to, overcome a major challenge at a previous company, right? And so it's not just like, oh, this is a good system, but it's like, hey, I've been there, I've used this, and it really worked for me, and this is why it could work for us.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it kind of shows you're not just like talking the talk, you've actually walked the walk.
Yeah, it's like showing your work a little bit, right?
Exactly.
Like, this isn't just me coming up with an idea out of thin air. I've actually been there and done this before, and that's why I think this is a good idea.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. That's super insightful.
And it kind of leads into the next part of like, okay, so you've established that credibility.
Yeah.
Now, how do you actually craft the story itself?
Right.
And this presentation talks about like 5 key elements that go into like a really good story, a really impactful story.
Right.
And those are purpose, dialogue, characters, timing, and body language.
Dialogue is an interesting one.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, especially in like business settings, presentations can get really dry.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a lot of jargon. It's
Yeah.
a lot of like bullet points.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just like, ugh.
You're just death by PowerPoint, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But think about how you can, make it more engaging. And dialogue is such a great way to do that. So instead of saying, like the team was resistant to change, you could say something like, I remember Sarah, our lead developer, said, I'm not sure this new system is worth the learning curve.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so suddenly you're not just talking about this abstract concept of resistance.
Yeah.
You're actually like, you're giving it a voice.
Yeah, you're putting us right there in the ring.
Exactly. And you're making it human. Right.
Yeah.
And people connect with that.
And it creates a little bit of drama too, right?
Absolutely.
It's like, ooh, Sarah's not sure. Like, what's going to happen?
Totally.
Okay, I like that.
So dialogue, super important.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked about crafting the story, but the presentation really emphasizes, knowing when to tell it is just as important.
Right. Timing is everything.
Exactly.
But how do you know, like, when is the right time for a particular story?
Well, I think it's all about, reading the room, understanding your audience. Are they feeling energized? Are they feeling kind of defeated? What are their needs in this moment?
So give me an example.
Okay, so let's say you're leading a meeting about a project that's, it's hitting some roadblocks, right? Everyone's feeling a little discouraged.
Yeah.
This might be a good time to share a story about a time when you overcame a similar challenge, and how you and your team, rallied and figured it out.
Yeah.
And that could really help inspire the team and give them a sense of hope, right? Like, okay, we can get through this.
Yeah.
But, on the flip side, if the team is already, super stressed, overworked, maybe that's not the best time to launch into a long, story. Maybe you need to address those immediate needs first and then maybe circle back to the story later.
So it's really about being strategic and using the story to actually, meet the needs of the situation.
Exactly.
Okay, now the presentation also dives into some specific frameworks for storytelling.
Yeah.
And the one that I think a lot of people have heard of is the hero's journey.
Yes.
And I get how that works in movies and books, but like, how do you apply that to I don't know, like a budget meeting.
Right. Well, I think it's all about finding the hero in your situation,
Yeah.
right? So maybe in this case, the hero is actually your team. You're all working together to try to secure funding for this new project.
Oh, okay.
Right. And the goal is getting that budget approved, right? And the obstacles are all those the challenges you're facing along the way, and maybe there are some doubts, maybe there are some, competing priorities. And then the resolution is, how you ultimately succeed,
Yeah.
how you get that budget approved and what you learned along the way.
So it's like giving them the numbers meaning.
Right. Exactly.
Well, instead of just presenting, like, here are the numbers,
Right.
you're giving them this narrative arc.
You're giving it a story.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's more compelling.
I like that.
Yeah. And, while the hero's journey is, I think, a really useful framework, it's not the only one, right? The presentation talks about a lot of other tools, We've got personal narratives, we've got fables.
Oh, yeah, fables are interesting.
Right. And even things like springboard storytelling, which I think is really cool.
What is springboard storytelling?
So think of it as like using storytelling to brainstorm, to generate new ideas, right? So maybe you start with a prompt like imagine a world where ... or what if we could ... right? And then you use storytelling to kind of explore those possibilities and
right.
come up with innovative solutions.
So it's less about the past and more about the future.
Exactly. It's like using storytelling to unlock creative potential.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah. And of course, we can't forget about reflecting on lessons learned.
Right.
Because whether it's a success or a failure, there's always something to be learned, right? And sharing those stories, can be really valuable for teams.
Yeah, it's funny because I was just thinking about this quote from Maya Angelou that they included in the presentation.
Oh, yeah.
It said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel."
Ah, that's so good.
And I just think that that really gets to the heart of it, right?
Yeah.
Because you can give people all the information in the world,
Right.
but if you don't make them feel something,
All right.
it's not going to stick.
It goes in one ear and out the other.
Totally, totally.
But a story that really resonates with you, it stays with you.
Yeah.
It can change your perspective. It can inspire you to action.
So it's not just about what you say, but it's about how you make people feel.
Exactly.
And that's how you actually get them to do something, to change their behavior.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff.
Yeah, I really encourage everybody to check out that presentation. And as you're thinking about all this, here's a question for you to kind of chew on. Think about a recent project or initiative that you've been working on.
Okay.
And how could you use that springboard storytelling technique
Oh, yeah.
to come up with new ideas or to overcome a challenge? Just something to think about.
Yeah. Good food for thought.
Yeah, good food for thought.
That's great.
All right, well, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
And happy storytelling, everyone.
Yes, go forth and tell stories.
Yeah, exactly.
Make the world a better place.
All right.
See you next time.
See ya.